of
No,
libraries.
and we're speaking about books. And I'm going to be chatting this morning with the Honorable Minister, Dr. Nyan Gadsby-Dolly, Minister of Education, because we are speaking about the reopening, the physical reopening of schools come February the 8th. Good morning, Honorable Minister.
Hi, good morning. Are you hearing me well?
Yes, I'm hearing you quite well.
Wonderful.
Yes,
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for being with us this morning. So on the ministry's website, there's a 28-page document that outlines the guidelines for the reopening of schools come February the 8th. Could you just give us a brief outline of some of the main points that, of course, students and parents alike would be more focused on for the reopening coming up next month?
Sure. I'll start with the secondary schools because they are projected to come out earlier. So on February 8th, we expect that the students of forms 4 to 6 will be available to head to school physically. We have asked that in the first instance, this be in a hybrid mode,
right,
in the sense that teaching should remain online as much as possible, and that's for the conceptual parts of it. And we are asking really for them to come out to school to complete their practical and their internal assessments and their SBs for completion of their CXC requirements. This is the main point of getting them back out to school because they must complete these requirements in order to write CXC. And Form 4, of course, has a large component for SBs as well. So that's dealing with the secondary schools.
Yes.
The primary schools, we are projecting to open those on April the 12th, and that will be only for students of Standard 5. Once again, these are the emergency ones because they have SCA coming up on June the 10th, and so we are asking that they come out at that time. In that document, a good portion of it is dedicated to the protocols that have to be observed, the entry protocols that we are asking schools to observe, hand washing, temperature checks. There's the insistence that there must be a quarantine area designated in the school where students, simply students who are displaying any flu-like symptoms are to be directed to, and the principal will make contact with their parents. Of course, in the document as well, which is available on the website so that parents can have a look at it and be well apprised of what it is, because it's going to be a partnership between the school, the home, and the ministry to ensure that, of course, the health officials to ensure that this happens. We are asking parents to be aware of the students' timetable because, of course, if they're in standard forms 4 to 6 and they're coming out only for labs, then their timetable may not require them to be in school from the start of school to the end of school. And schools, of course, are operating within the usual hours. So we're asking parents to be well aware of when your child is expected to be at school and to ensure that that is facilitated, and also to ensure that they get back home as soon as possible. Because you want to minimize their transport times and so on the road and all of that. In the schools, we are asking the schools to keep repeating the safety protocols at measured times during the day, and they can use these as sanitization breaks. So, children take out their hand sanitizers that they have brought from home and so on. We're asking parents to supply them, and, they sanitize their hands. And so while they hear the safety protocols being reiterated on the PA system of the schools, in terms of school operation, we have instituted no whole school assemblies and staggered breaks for the children so that there's less opportunity for them to congregate, no overall lunchtime, stagger all of that. We've asked that the schools allow students to sit in their classrooms and have their lunch and their breaks and so on, so that they don't have all the students outside at one time. The desks have to be placed at an appropriate distance apart so that the students are 6 feet apart, head-to-head distancing as outlined by the Ministry of Health. And so these are the main protocols that will be in place from February 8th as the secondary school students come back out. And then once all goes well, our numbers are good, April the 12th for primary schools.
All right. And with these entry protocols and such in place, let's speak about during the school hours when all the students are there. Now, you did outline some of the measures that should be put in place, but when it comes to the enforcement of these measures on the school property, would the teachers be responsible to help enforce them, or would there be security personnel involved? How will that be handled?
The teachers, of course, would be the point of despair in terms of ensuring that during class time, students are not going outside en masse and so on. The school's administration, they will deal in terms of the staggering of the breaks and who goes outside and so on, because they would have the timetable, and especially for secondary schools, they would have that to organize, and so they will take charge of that aspect of it. On the school compound, some schools have school safety officers, some schools have the state security guards, and also for the primary schools, the substitute teacher system will be reactivated to allow for more supervision, because that is the area where you would have more students coming out for a longer stretch of time, and of course, those are younger students. So there will be more supervision put in place for the primary schools. And of course, so everyone on the school compound, staff included, is expected to look out for the students. And of course, the students are expected to also have a sense of responsibility, which is why we are saying to parents from even now, re-emphasize with your students exactly how they're supposed to behave. Have these breaks during the day so that the students are reminded, over and over of how they behavior should take place. And of course, all students, all staff, everyone on the school compound has to comply with the law, which is everyone must wear a mask.
That leads me to my next question. There would be certain students who have respiratory ailments such as asthma and things not related to the flu or the COVID-19 virus. Have provisions been made for those students who, for them, it may not be the healthiest thing to wear a mask on the compound or for the entire day? Have provisions been made for that, Minister?
We have asked that the students wear masks in compliance with the Ministry of Health regulations. They have not indicated face shields, but certainly on a case-by-case basis, we would have to deal with that type of situation. Students who are at risk and yet still must fulfill the requirements, especially of CXC doing labs and so on. So we are asking schools, of course, to, on a case-by-case basis, deal with these kinds of situations. What will also be instituted is a health unit for the ministry, where we would have 2 district nurses assigned to every school district, and they are really in a coordinating function, and they will be looking at these types of cases, because we may have students also coming to school displaying flu-like symptoms that may be from an allergy or so on, and based on the entry protocols, they will be debarred from entering the school compound. So parents who have students in that situation would have to make contact with the principal, and the health unit will work to give the type of clearance necessary for them to enter the school compound. And then if there are any particular arrangements to be made for children with these issues, then of course that will have to be handled at the level of the school. And if there's need for further intervention, certainly the ministry through the health unit will make those interventions to allow for those children to be helped. But in the first instance, with the secondary schools, because teaching is continuing online, it will really be arrangements for them to get to school to do their labs in the best circumstances possible.
Let's speak now about the school premises itself. In some cases where things are put into disuse, it oftentimes deteriorate. Has there been inspection of the various school compounds and premises to ensure the physical safety of the school during the time in which it had not been used by the public, the students, to ensure safety at this point?
Well, schools have been open since September, and even before that, school students were out in July and August of 2020 because they were doing CXA exams as well as SCE. So since August, principals should have been in the school compounds, and they would have been in the school compounds. And so the schools, those students were not in, the principals would have been there, and so they would have been doing that kind of inspection. We have been doing continuously since March last year and continuing all into September. And even now, school repair projects as principals would have been making their requests on the online system. So that is ongoing. And certainly we have been in touch with stakeholders since November on this issue of reopening. And we have been speaking with the associations, principals, teachers, and so on. So this has been in the air since then. Right. And so we have asked, of course, and we would have expected that principals would have reported whatever issues coming forward that they would need to be addressed. And so we are doing that currently and will continue in schools where there were not sufficient sinks and so on. Those are currently being installed to ensure that schools are in a state of readiness. And so we are, from the side of the ministry, doing our best to ensure that every school has the correct atmosphere for opening. So works are continuing even now.
Wonderful. And before we go, Minister, when it comes to, the new protocols in place and such, was there additional training or some sort of workshop done to help update teachers when it comes to them helping to enforce these protocols as well, especially sanitation?
Again, the protocols that are to be observed in schools are no different from the protocols that we have been asked to observe for the past couple months. So there's nothing new about hand washing. There's nothing new about wearing a mask. There's nothing new about temperature checks and so on. All of these things are what we're accustomed to. And so what we have done in the document that's available to everyone, schools, teachers, everyone, is that we have re-emphasized exactly what we have been doing for the past, coming up to almost a year now. So there's nothing that is new about that. We have emphasized exactly what we need to do, which we know we need to do. Schools, of course, before reopening, will normally do session with their teachers and so on. And so we expect that to be emphasized when the principals and the teachers meet. And if there's any need for additional assistance, certainly the resources of the ministry will be put in place to assist any school that needs that type of extra work on that. But we do not anticipate that that's going to be across the board, that schools would need that, because we have been as clear as possible in the document. And certainly when the health unit comes on, then we will, of course, make all efforts to get to the schools and ensure that the schools understand the operations of the health unit and how they are interact with them. But certainly at this time, the document that has been put out should be sufficient to guide principals and teachers with respect to operations at the school.
Honourable Minister, I want to thank you so much for your time this morning, and we look forward to the, physical reopening of schools for those specific classes and forms. And I want to thank you for your time once more and giving us an update on that.
Certainly. Thanks for having me. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Yes, you as well. Have a great day. All right, that was the Honourable Minister, Dr. Nan Gadsby-Dolly, Minister of Education, giving us an update and an outline as to the reopening of schools coming February 8th for the secondary and primary school levels when it comes to those classes that would be taking exams soon and those that need to do school-based assessments and the like.